welcome to another edition of Here We Are with Dallas Holm. That would be this guy, which you probably know by now. This is kind of different. I was just telling, I introduced my friend to you in just a second. Normally my daughter Jennifer, as you know, has kind of introduced, introed, and I do the easy part. I just kind of sit here and respond and answer her questions, whatever. Now the shoe's on the other foot, so I've got to try to drive this thing a little bit. But we're going to have a good time. I do want you to meet one of my very best friends in all the world. We've been friends for how many years now? Quite a number of years.
20-something.
Yeah. Keith lives here in Lindale, Texas. Keith Irwin is his name. And before we go on, yes, kind of the elephant in the room, not too subtle, as we are both Packers fans. I think we've let you kind of know that before, but we have a lot of commonality, both in music. Keith is an excellent musician, but also in our choice of football teams. And as we're videoing this right now, the Packers are just getting ready this weekend to enter, I guess it'd be the quarterfinals.
That's right.
And then if they win, which they most certainly will, then they go into the NFC Championship, and then we hope to see them in the Super Bowl. So any of you out there who are Packer fans, we apologize to the rest of you, but go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go. We will convert you before this is over with.
Well, I always say, you were asking me when did I become a convert, because I grew up in Minnesota, a Vikings fan, and Days of the Purple People Eaters, man, Carl Eller, Jim Marshall, Alan Page, Gary Larson, offense, Fran Tarkenton, Foreman, Brown, all these great old players. I love the team. And then I moved to Texas many years ago, slowly, reluctantly became a Cowboys fan, but in the Landry years, Landry was such a great man, great teams. I actually had the privilege of doing a couple events with Tom Landry. I think they were one was Fellowship of Christian Athletes, one was an FBI Fort Worth Police Department prayer breakfast thing. So I had a little personal time with him. He was a wonderful man, great man.
Yep.
But then things changed, as we all know, and I just, the luster went off the star for me a little bit. Well, my son-in-law, as you know, is from Wisconsin, Oshkosh area. He bleeds green and gold. When he came into the family, that's all we heard was pack of this and pack of that. So probably 10, 12 years ago, he called me. I was on the road somewhere, and he said, "Dad, is there any way you could get to Wisconsin? I've got 2 tickets to a Packer game Monday night."
Unbelievable.
He'd gotten through a friend, 50-yard line, second row, Monday night, Vikings-Packers. I said, "Look, I'll figure it out."
Yeah.
So I got there, we watched the game, it snowed, it was just the perfect scenario. The next day we ate at Curly's Pub, went to the pro shop, bought some stuff, then we took the tour.
Now, Lambeau.
I haven't been to every tour in every field, but I can't imagine that there's a better tour anywhere, because nobody can claim the history. 13 world championships, going way back there to the meatpacking days. It really is and it's a small market. Now we live close to Tyler, Texas here, which is population around 100,000. And I think that's about Green Bay.
Yeah.
So we think, what would it be like to have a major NFL franchise in downtown Tyler, Texas? Well, that's what they have.
In the neighborhood of downtown Tyler.
Right.
I couldn't believe once we got there, and Sheri and I, my wife, have been to a lot of stadiums over the years. But to go take the tour at Lambeau, it is definitely worth the $20.
Right. Even if you hate the Packers.
That's right. Just so historical. And just right off of the parking lot, there's these nice little quaint streets with cute little houses, just totally almost surrounding that stadium.
We parked probably, 6, 8 blocks away. Every little house, they can accommodate maybe 3, 4, 5 cars. They'll charge them $20 to park there. You walk through the neighborhood, then you walk across the parking lot. Of course, all the tailgaters are out there. It's just a phenomenal experience. And then when we took the tour, we actually had the oldest tour guide. He was the guy that had been there forever, instructed the other guides. So he was just great. Go through the museum, all the Lombardi stuff, all the great players. And then towards the end, you come out where the Packers do the locker room. You can't go on the field, but you come out, and there's Lambeau Stadium. And I always say, and I saw a bright light, and I gave my heart to Vince.
To Vince. Mr. Lombardi.
Well, even as a Minnesota fan growing up, I didn't have a sense of, I knew there was a lot of people in Minnesota, Vikings fan, hated the Packers. I never had that. I always thought, it's a great organization. I remembered Bart Starr, remember seeing him play, and all those great old play, Jim Taylor and Horning, and that whole bunch. Who's 66? Nitschke, Ray Nitschke, the teeth missing. Yeah. I just always thought, man, what a great team, but I just didn't have a connection. Well, when I converted, as we say, and we'll get spiritual here in a moment, though. If you're a real Packer fan, this is spiritual. But I realized that all of my family on both sides, my mom's side and my dad's side, all come from Wisconsin. All our family roots are in Wisconsin. So that made me feel a little more like, okay, I belong. This is legit. So anyway, we're having a little fun with that. Of course, you see the Reggie White, Minister of Defense, Jersey Reggie was a wonderful, wonderful Christian. And of course, we certainly miss him, but probably in our estimation, the best ever. Yeah, I was going to invite Keith. He wears that because his head gets cold. I don't know why he gets
I don't either.
So let me tell you just a little bit about Keith, then we want to get into this. As I said, Keith is a great friend. I often say he's one of the most energetic people I've ever known. He is a worship leader. He teaches guitar, voice, drums, tuba, whatever. Yeah, I mean, almost literally. If you want to learn an instrument, he can teach it to you. He has a couple of men's discipleship groups weekly that he teaches men. And then currently he's working in a government organization that assists our great veterans in some of their trials and tribulations as they try to decompress back into civilian life. And there's always tons of paperwork and issues and things that they don't know about, and Keith helps to walk them through that. So Keith served in the Navy, served aboard the USS Nimitz, if I remember. Yep. In fact, in a moment, I want you to share that story, and it's a little bit about me, so this is going to be kind of like, okay, enough about me, let's talk about you. What do you think about me? I don't mean it to be that way, but I think it helps to, because what we really want to talk about is discipleship, discipling. Keith's passion, if you crack his head open, what falls out is discipling men. That's his passion. That's his gift, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I think it started years ago, and I would say as a leading question, at what point did you realize that was your passion? Yeah. Keith actually, prior to the Nimitz, I think it was prior to the Nimitz, he finished SEAL training, made it all the way through. And you can correct me, you can share more, but I think as a relatively new Christian, upon finishing that course of discipline, instruction, preparation, realized I'm not sure for me as a Christian, this is where I feel comfortable heading. That is said with, I know absolutely no disregard or disrespect.
None.
You are marvelous. In fact, quite the opposite.
I had a great career.
These guys are our heroes, but you have to make up your own mind. Everybody, this is a fit for me or it's not. Yeah. So for Keith at that point, upon finishing, realized, okay, I finished the course, I can step into this, but I'm a Christian too, and I feel some callings and passions elsewhere. How do I put that? So take it from there, if you will.
For me, I felt like from there, I didn't have what I call the assassin's mentality. I couldn't picture myself as a new Christian slipping up on a bank and slitting a man or a woman's throat or killing a little child and not knowing whether or not I just sent that child or that man or woman to hell or not.
Right.
So I did not have that assassin's mentality, so I put in for new orders and they sent me to the Nimitz. But to go back before that, let me just tell them just a little bit about my naval career, just a little bit, and how Dallas was influential in my life and what God did through discipleship and through you mentoring me, so to speak, on board the Nimitz. That's what I think where you were going. Yeah. I got saved a month before I went in the Navy. I get into the Navy and I'm thinking I can pray prone in my rack. And God and I, the very first night of boot camp, we had an argument, and I won because I thought, well, you know, I'm a grown man now. I can lay on my back and pray. And God said, "Do you love me?" And I said, "Yes, Lord, I love you." And He said, "Well, then, what is your custom?" It had been 6 months, and I had always knelt by a hide-a-bed couch. And so the second night, His voice came even stronger. "Do you love me?" And I said, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you. And He said, "Well, humble yourself and kneel before me." So I'm kneeling, and if you get caught after lights out saying anything or conversing with anybody, you get written up. You get written up 3 times back then, and you got kicked out of the Navy, even boot camp. So I'm getting out of my rack. It's going to be the shortest prayer on earth, and I'm praying, and I hear somebody go, "Psst." And I ignored it. "Psst," a little louder. And I'll say, "What? Are you praying?" "Yeah." "Can I join you?" "Yeah." So that turned into me leading men to the Lord. The only light we had was in the head. I would take my Bible, I would go into the head and lead men to the Lord. And in a time where a lot of men, because of the testing and just everything of boot camp, needed God. Yeah. And so I led men to the Lord there, led men to the Lord when I was in A school up in Great Lakes, Illinois, and then also when we went out to Coronado. But then when I got on the ship, what happened was between Coronado and meeting the Nimitz, I came home. I went to a Christian Family Day at Six Flags over Texas. And I saw Dallas Holm and Praise, and he had just come out with your live album. No, you had your live album, and Tell 'Em Again.
Tell 'Em Again was the album.
Tell 'Em Again had just come out. I bought them both. It's going to show our age, but they were cassettes.
Yes.
I bought both of the cassettes. I go to the Nimitz.
And the live album was available in 8-track, too.
Well, there you go. Just for the record.
Sad,
yeah. 8-track. So I take these two cassettes. I go to the Nimitz, and I had the Elijah Complex. It was a ship that was a literally floating city. If you've never been on a Nimitz-class carrier, that's what they call them. And anyway, it's just this huge, gigantic...
How many crew members would there be?
8,000.
Yeah, that's what I was
saying. Yeah,
we'll
get the air wing on board. There were 8,000, 120 airplanes. It was 3 football. The flight deck itself is 3 football fields long, 1.5 wide. And I get on board. I'm thinking I'm the only Christian here, because we were at Rota, Spain for a week, and my officer, my petty officer, just said, just lose yourself on the ship, find your way around. And so for the first week or two, I didn't know any other Christians. I thought I was the only Christian. I had that Elijah complex, is what I call it. And one day I go into what they call the chapel. It was in the island, the superstructure. And I crack the door open the hatch, and there's another man in there. And it's like our eyes met. And it's like, are you? Yeah. And so from that, we began to meet, 2 of us, just the 2 of us, once a week. And I formed a group called Wellspring on board the Nimitz. We're coming back from our very first med cruise, and I had taught even our bass player 10 of your songs from those 2 cassettes. And he didn't know what notes he was playing. He just had the songs memorized. Yeah. We took the stage. There were 7 of us on stage. There were 2,000 men.
Wow.
That showed up out of boredom, and literally out of boredom. Because when they announced it, they said, well, if you don't have anything else to do, at 1900 hours, there's going to be a Christian concert in Hangar Bay 2. You might want to show up for it. Right. Literally, that was the announcement. 2,000 men show up, you could say, out of boredom, and we sang 10 of Dallas's songs. I gave a little short speech and an invitation. We had 52 men come to know the Lord that night, and we did real good follow-up. And so every space they gave us after that, 3 more years, we outgrew. Wow. To where there were over 500 of us meeting once a week on board the Nimitz during that time that I was on board. And so God used you before I ever really truly even knew you personally, before I moved to Lindale in my life. Now, so what I did was navigators, and still to this very day, it's not rocket science. It's not some magical thing that you have to do to disciple another man. And I've always said men with men, women with women. But you just take a guy that's hungry and thirsty for righteousness, and when God brings him across your path, you just get into what I call a one-on-one situation with him. And I used navigator material. We would just, these little pamphlets at the time, and we used, I still got my one for this particular day, these little packets, and they have little cards in them, and we would grab them out of each other's pocket, and we would say, what verse you working on, 2 Timothy 3:16, kind of thing. And so while we were standing in line, and you stood in line for everything, with 8,000 men on board, you can just imagine, you stood in line every meal, you stood in line to get shots, you stood in line to get paid, you stood in line to get your check cashed, and all kinds of stuff like that. So while we were in line, and we would quiz one another, and then we led men to the Lord too, because they would be interested in what we were doing. And so then there was this discipleship thing that became a part of my life. And so we can do a whole nother session if you want to.
And we're going to, actually. I'm looking at
the particulars.
And not to cut you off.
That's
great.
fun.
This
That's
is
fun.
what we wanted this to be, was kind of an introductory. Taste. This is Keith, you know who I am, but getting into the realm of discipleship. And I would say every Christian wants to be discipled, but also every Christian needs to be a discipler.
Yes.
And I think that's where and that's what we'll talk about next time. We'll start to get into this, because I think that's something that falls too easily through the cracks in the quote church world. Evangelism, everybody wants to be an evangelist. Missions, and please don't misunderstand. Praise God for our missionaries. There are all kinds of ways to respond to the call of God, and we'll talk about that next time, about going into the world and preaching the gospel. But the end game of all of that is to culminate in discipling, to make mature Christians who then can turn around and help make other mature Christians.
Right.
So that's where we're heading, and I know that you're going to enjoy this a lot. I think you already have. We'll probably take down Reggie's jersey before the next one, but we'll probably keep the same clothes on because we're going to do several of these together. We'll keep our Packer gear on. Yeah. But until next time, God bless you. Keith Irwin Ministries, last name Irwin, Keith Irwin Ministries. If you'd like to find out more about his ministry, please log on to that. You know where we're at, DallasHolm.com. Anything and everything you want to know about us, and a few things you don't, it's all there. Visit us there. We'll see you next time. God bless.